What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actresses walks into what should be a simple interview, only to be met with condescension and disrespect? In just 32 seconds, everything fell apart. One comment, one dismissive remark, and Dame Judi Dench had enough. This is the story of how a respected icon was pushed too far by a host who forgot who she was dealing with. The morning started like any other on the set. Judi Dench arrived at the studio with her usual grace and warmth. She was there to promote her latest project, a film that had been receiving incredible reviews across the country. The audience was excited. This was supposed to be a celebration of her work, a chance for fans to hear from one of the greatest actresses of all time. But from the moment Judi sat down on that couch, something felt off. The host greeted her with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. There was a tension in the air that the audience could not quite place. Judi, ever the professional, smiled warmly and settled into her seat, ready to discuss her passion for acting and the beautiful story she helped bring to life. The interview began innocently enough. The host asked about the film, and Judi lit up as she spoke about the character she portrayed. Her eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm as she described the emotional journey of the role. This was what she loved. This was her craft. The audience leaned in, captivated by every word. Then the host cut her off mid-sentence. Judi paused, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. The host laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the studio. She turned to the panel members sitting beside her and made a comment that stopped everyone cold. The host said, and I quote, "Well, that's all very nice, dear, but don't you think you're a bit past your prime for these romantic roles?" The studio went silent. You could hear the collective intake of breath from the audience. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Judi's expression shifted. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by something cold and steely. She straightened in her seat, her posture rigid. One of the panel members, a younger television personality known for being outspoken, tried to smooth things over. She laughed nervously and said, "Oh, come now, she's just joking, Judi, you know how she is." But Judi was not having it. She turned to the panel member with a look that could cut glass. She said, "I don't find ageism particularly funny, do you?" The panel member's smile faltered. She stammered something about not meaning any offense, but Judi had already turned her attention back to the host. The host, for her part, seemed almost amused by the reaction she had provoked. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs casually as if she hadn't just insulted one of the most respected actresses in the world. The host said, "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm simply saying that perhaps roles like these should go to younger actresses who can bring fresh energy to them. Surely you must see that." Judi's jaw tightened. She took a slow breath, clearly trying to maintain her composure. The audience was on the edge of their seats. Another panel member, a film critic who had worked with Judi on several occasions, jumped in to defend her. The critic said, "With all due respect, Dame Judi Dench has more talent in her little finger than most actresses half her age have in their entire body. Age has nothing to do with the ability to portray emotion and truth on screen." The host rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes. She said, "Oh, please, let's not pretend that Hollywood isn't a young person's game. Everyone knows it. I'm just being honest about what everyone's thinking." That was it. That was the moment. Judi placed her hands on the armrest of the chair and began to stand. The host's expression flickered with uncertainty for the first time. Judi stood tall, her dignity intact despite the disrespect she had endured. Judi said, "I have spent over 6 decades in this industry. I have worked with the greatest directors, actors, and writers of our time. I have won every major award there is to win, and I will not sit here and be lectured about my place in this business by someone who clearly has no understanding of what it takes to truly create art." The host tried to laugh it off. She said, "Oh, Judi, come on. Sit back down. You're being ridiculous." But Judi was already unhooking her microphone. Her movements were deliberate and calm, but there was a fire in her eyes that everyone could see. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching this extraordinary moment unfold. Another panel member, an older actor who had known Judi for years, stood up in solidarity. He said, I think what Judi is trying to say, and what you clearly can't grasp, is that this kind of attitude is exactly what's wrong with our industry. Talent doesn't have an expiration date. The host's face flushed red. She was losing control of her own show, and she knew it. She snapped, "Well, if you're both so offended, perhaps you should leave too." The older actor did not hesitate. He removed his microphone and stood beside Judi. The critic who had defended Judi earlier looked conflicted, but ultimately decided to stay seated, though her discomfort was obvious. The young panel member who had tried to smooth things over earlier now looked horrified. Realizing she had been complicit in the whole ugly scene, Judi turned to face the audience one last time. She said, "To anyone watching who has ever been told they're too old, too experienced, or too anything to pursue their passion, please know that your worth is not determined by someone else's narrow view of the world. Never let anyone diminish your light." The audience erupted into applause. It started with one person, then another, until the entire studio was on their feet, clapping and cheering for Judi. The host sat there, her face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Unable to regain control, Judi nodded graciously to the audience, that familiar warmth returning to her expression, and walked off the set with her head held high. The older actor followed close behind her. As Judi disappeared backstage, the host tried desperately to salvage what was left of the show. She turned to the remaining panel members with a forced smile. She said, "Well, that was certainly unexpected. Shall we continue?" But the damage was done. The young panel member spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. She said, "I think I need to be honest here. What just happened was not okay. Dame Judi Dench deserves better than this, we all do." The host's smile vanished. She said, "Excuse me, you're here as my guest. I will not be lectured by you too." The young panel member stood up. She said, "Then I guess I'm no longer your guest." And she walked off too. The critic remained in her seat, but she was clearly uncomfortable. She kept glancing toward the exit where Judi had disappeared. The host was visibly flustered now. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. She tried to pivot to a commercial break, but her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. The cameras kept rolling for a few seconds longer than they should have, capturing her genuine distress. Backstage, Judi was surrounded by crew members who wanted to express their support. Many of them had worked in television for years and had witnessed this kind of behavior before, but no one had ever seen someone stand up to it quite like Judi just had. One makeup artist approached her with tears in her eyes. The makeup artist said, "Thank you for saying what you said. My mother is 68, and she was told she was too old to start a new career last year. She gave up on her dream because of people like that host. I wish she could have seen what you just did." Judi reached out and squeezed the woman's hand. She said, "Tell your mother it's never too late. Tell her Judi Dench said so." The older actor who had walked out with Judi stood nearby, shaking his head in disbelief. He said, "I've been in this business for 40 years and I've never seen anything quite like that. The arrogance, the disrespect. Who does she think she is?" Judi sighed. She said, "She thinks she's untouchable. She thinks that because she has a platform, she can say whatever she wants without consequence. But she forgot one very important thing." The actor asked, "What's that?" Judi smiled, a knowing smile that held decades of wisdom. She said, "She forgot that respect is earned, not given, and she certainly hasn't earned mine." Back on set, the host was trying to continue the show with just the critic remaining on the panel, but the energy was completely gone. The audience was no longer engaged. They were whispering among themselves, clearly discussing what they had just witnessed. The host kept glancing at the empty chairs where Judi and the others had been sitting, and each time she did, her irritation grew more visible. The host tried to make a joke about the situation. She said, "Well, I suppose some people just can't handle a bit of honest conversation, can they?" The critic, who had been silent for several minutes, finally spoke up. Her voice was measured but firm. She said, "I think what people can't handle is being disrespected for no reason. Dame Judi Dench is a legend. What you said to her wasn't honest conversation. It was cruel and unnecessary." The host's eyes narrowed. She said, "Are you seriously defending her right now after she just walked out on my show?" The critic nodded. She said, "Yes, I am," because she was right to walk out. And honestly, I'm not sure why I'm still sitting here. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The host opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She was speechless, a rare occurrence for someone who made her living talking. The production team in the control room was scrambling, trying to figure out how to end this disaster of a segment. Finally, mercifully, they cut to a commercial. But even during the break, the damage continued. The host refused to apologize, insisting she had done nothing wrong. She told the producers that Judi was being overly sensitive and that the whole thing was being blown out of proportion. Meanwhile, Judi was gathering her things and preparing to leave the building. A producer approached her, clearly nervous. He said, "Dame Judi, I'm so sorry about what happened. Is there anything we can do to make this right?" Judi looked at him kindly. She said, "You can start by having a serious conversation with your host about the way she treats her guests. Rudeness should not be mistaken for entertainment." The producer nodded vigorously. He said, Of course. We'll definitely address this." Judi gave him a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. She had heard promises like this before. She said, "I hope you do, for the sake of every other guest who comes on this show." As Judi walked toward the exit, several audience members who had been allowed backstage during the commercial break approached her. They thanked her for standing up for herself and for sending such a powerful message. One elderly woman had tears streaming down her face. The woman said, "My granddaughter brought me here today because she knows how much I love your work. I'm 73 years old, and I was told just last week that I should stop pursuing acting because I'm too old. Watching you today gave me hope." Judi embraced the woman. She said, "Never stop pursuing what you love. Age is just a number. Talent and passion are timeless." Back in the studio, the show had resumed after the commercial break. The host was trying to act as if nothing had happened, but her discomfort was obvious. The critic was still on the panel, but was barely participating. Every question the host asked was met with short, clipped responses. The host said, "So, moving on to our next topic, let's talk about the upcoming award season. Who do you think will take home the top prizes?" The critic said flatly, "Dame Judi Dench deserves every award for her latest performance. She's extraordinary in the film." The host's jaw clenched. She said, "Right. Well, let's hear from some other perspectives then. Audience, what do you think?" But the audience was not interested in playing along anymore. One brave soul stood up and said, "I think we all just witnessed something very disturbing. That woman you disrespected is a national treasure. You owe her an apology." Several other audience members voiced their agreement. The host was losing control of her own show completely now. Her face was red. Her hands were shaking slightly. She said, "I think we need to take another break." But before they could cut away, another audience member shouted, "No, we want to hear you apologize." The crowd began to murmur in agreement. It was unprecedented. The host looked to her producers for help, but they were just as stunned as everyone else. The host stood up from her chair. She said, "I'm not going to apologize for speaking my mind. If people can't handle honesty, that's their problem, not mine." The critic stood up too. She said, "You know what? I'm done here." And she walked off the set, leaving the host completely alone. The audience erupted into applause once again, this time even louder than before. The host stood there, abandoned by her guests and rejected by her audience. The reality of what she had done finally sinking in. Outside the studio, Judi was climbing into her car when she heard footsteps behind her. It was the young panel member who had also walked out. The young woman looked embarrassed. She said, "Dame Judi, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you immediately instead of trying to make excuses for her behavior." Judi smiled warmly. She said, "You did stand up eventually. That takes courage. Don't be too hard on yourself." The young woman looked relieved. "I've always admired your work. Today I learned that you're just as impressive off-screen as you are on it." Judi reached out and squeezed her hand. "Remember this moment. Remember that staying silent in the face of injustice makes us complicit. Use your voice even when it's difficult." The young woman nodded, clearly moved. "I will. Thank you." As Judi's car pulled away from the studio, she looked out the window one last time. She felt no regret about walking out. In fact, she felt empowered. She had stood up for herself and in doing so for everyone who had ever been dismissed or diminished because of their age. Inside the studio, Chaos reigned. The producers were in emergency meetings trying to figure out how to handle the situation. The host was in her dressing room refusing to come out or speak to anyone. Crew members were openly discussing what they had witnessed, many expressing admiration for Judi and disappointment in the host. One crew member said, "I've worked on this show for 5 years and I've never seen anything like that. She really thought she could talk to Dame Judi Dench that way and get away with it." Another replied, "The worst part is this isn't the first time she's been rude to a guest. It's just the first time someone had the guts to call her out publicly." Throughout the day, conversations continued. People were taking sides, though the overwhelming majority sided with Judi. Even those who had previously defended the host found it impossible to justify her behavior this time. What she said was indefensible, and doubling down only made it worse. That evening, as Judi sat at home reflecting on the day's events, she received a phone call from the older actor who had walked out with her. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing," he said. "I'm doing well, actually. Better than I expected. How about you?" He laughed. "I'm fantastic. I've been getting messages all day from people thanking us for what we did." "Apparently we've become accidental heroes," Judi smiled. "We're not heroes. We simply refuse to be disrespected. Everyone should do the same. Well, hero or not, you certainly made an impact today," he said. "That host will think twice before she tries to belittle someone again." They talked for a while longer about the industry, changing attitudes toward age, and the importance of standing up for oneself. When they finally hung up, Judi felt at peace. She had handled the situation with grace and dignity, and she had no regrets. By the next morning, the story had spread far beyond the studio. Social media was flooded with support for Judi. People everywhere shared their own experiences of being dismissed or underestimated because of their age. The conversation she had sparked was exactly the one that needed to happen. As for the host, she faced a reckoning. Her refusal to apologize and her insistence that she had done nothing wrong turned public opinion firmly against her. The very platform she thought made her untouchable became her undoing. People demanded accountability and consequences. But this isn't about what happened to the host after that day. This is about what happened in that studio. Those moments when Judi Dench decided she had had enough. It's about the courage it takes to stand up for yourself when someone tries to diminish you. It's about refusing to accept disrespect no matter who it comes from. Judi Dench walked onto that set as a guest, there to share her work and connect with her audience. She walked off as something more. A symbol of dignity, strength, and the refusal to be treated as anything less than she deserved. In 32 seconds, everything changed. One comment from the host revealed her true colors. One dismissive remark showed her lack of respect. And in response, one decision from Judi showed the world what real class looks like. The host thought she was running the show, that she was in control. But what she failed to understand is that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. And on that day, in that studio, she lost whatever respect she might have once had. Judi Dench reminded everyone that we all have the power to walk away from situations that do not serve us. We all have the right to demand better treatment and should never allow anyone to make us feel small, no matter how big their platform might be. That is the real story. Not the drama, not the conflict, but the lesson. Stand up for yourself. Know your worth. Never let anyone convince you that you are anything less than extraordinary. Regardless of your age or experience, never let others use those things against you. Judi Dench didn't need that show. The show needed her. And when they forgot that, when the host forgot who she was dealing with, Judi reminded them in the most powerful way possible. She simply stood up and walked away, leaving behind a studio full of people who would never forget what they had witnessed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own disrespect. Judi understood that, and on that day she showed the world exactly what that looks like.